Hey everyone, Nicki Traikos here for Life by Design. Time for a little studio update. I'm going to share some things with you that I've been working on. But I wanted to start with what's happening here on YouTube and what my plan is and things that maybe you've been seeing and noticing. So back in 2020, I decided to start a podcast because I love consuming podcasts so much. So I thought it'd be great to share a little bit more about my journey, my insights, some advice, hopefully inspiration. So we've been moving those here to YouTube so that you can enjoy listening to them maybe as you're working at your desk and painting, drawing, whatever it is that you're working on. So if you haven't tuned in yet, there is a playlist. It's Life by Design, the podcast. There are episodes that I recorded back in 2020 and 2021. I think there's some really good information there. And like I said, I hope that it shares a little bit more of my story that maybe I don't talk about as much, but also just some of my personal insight on creating art, making art, doing it as a hobby, maybe even doing it as a business. There's some good nuggets there. So hopefully you've been tuning in and enjoying them. Let me know. Next up, I've been thinking a lot about this space and feeling like I love Instagram for the inspiration, the connection, but I don't feel like I get to see posts from people. I may have mentioned this before, but back in the day when it was chronological, you could see everyone's posts. I really love the platform. I'm finding that YouTube is where I'm being drawn to more and more, and I'll be creating more videos and sharing more information here on this social media. Is it social media really? I don't know. I kind of feel like it's more information sharing. So my plan is not to create like watercolor tutorials or things like that where you're going to be painting along with me. I have online classes, and that's where I spend a lot of my energy, my passion, my time, my focus. So I want to give you everything in those classes versus something that you can just paint and walk away, not maybe having learned everything that I want you to learn and experienced everything that I want you to experience. But I do want to be in the space and to be able to be along with you on your creative journey. So here is where I'm going to share more of my insight, philosophy, hopefully inspire you. I will do little painting exercises, I think. I have even a book tutorial that I'm thinking of doing with you, where if you've taken some of my classes, you'll have seen that I've been starting to really dive into making my own sketchbooks. I love it. I love vintage books and vintage paper. So I'll be doing some tutorial, but it'll be mostly just sharing inspiration and creativity and hopefully giving you a little bit of a boost so that if you're taking a class, if you're doing a tutorial, you have, again, just a little nudge. Because I know when I was first starting Life by Design and wanting to be an artist and a working artist and be supported by my art, like making money and really supporting myself, demystifying the whole starving artist persona, I looked for stories and nuggets and boosts when I really was down, when I felt like things weren't getting traction or I wasn't sure what direction I wanted to take. So those stories and nuggets of inspiration are what pushed me through those moments where I was really needing some hope. So I'm hoping that these videos are what gives you a little bit of inspiration and some hope, and know that it's a journey and a process. And if you can make it a more positive one along the way, then I'm here for it. So I hope you are too. Give me a thumbs up and let me know. So this is a little studio update. I have been working on the art side of my business more. Pre-pandemic, I would create artwork that would go on to coffee mugs and greeting cards and wall art. And I was in group exhibitions and shows, and I was constantly making art. Through the pandemic, I really leaned into teaching classes and couldn't believe just how much joy I got from that. So I leaned in more, and if you've taken any classes with me, you know how much I just put into those classes and really love being an instructor. I have a new part of my business that I've been working on, and that's through self-publishing on Amazon. So I actually have been publishing some books. I got my first publishing deal. If you've been following me, you know that. So that part of my creative life has been really fulfilling, and I feel like I have created so much opportunity and resources for other artists to really dive into their art practice, and it's actually inspired me to dive into my own personal art practice again. So I have a solo art exhibition happening in my local Mackay Art Center, which is in Unionville. So November 8th will be the opening reception. I'll share more about it as it comes closer to the day, probably June, July. I'll start sharing more about that. But if you're in the area, please come. I would love to meet you in person. So I've been creating a lot of work. I've been creating, you can see them behind me, oil paintings, acrylic paintings, mixed media, abstracts, collages. I am such a multi-passionate artist that it can be overwhelming. Focus is a word that I tend to use a lot, but I have just been really leaning into this creative explosion that's been happening in my office, and so much so that I haven't been able to find a lot of things, which is a little bit frustrating, but needless to say, so there's a lot of art making happening. I'm doing the 100-day project, which is something I want to share with you about, and it'll actually give us a really good segue into quantity over quality, or quality over quantity. So this is the main thing that I want to share with you today, is what I've learned along the way with this 100-day project. I am on day 72. I think the furthest I've ever been, and that was when I was doing photography, so it was 1 photo a day. I probably got to day 34. So I am so surprised. You can see I've been touching my paper. I'm such a tactile. I need paper and things to hold in my life. Now I've forgotten what I was going to say. So I have really been enjoying the process of drawing or painting portraits, exploring portraits every day for the last 72 days. I can't believe it. And this is sort of a reflection of what has happened. So these are my pre-cut sheets that I've been using. They're all numbered and dated, not dated, but numbered. And then these are the ones that I've actually painted. So this is quantity. So this is every day. I sit down with my morning cup of coffee most often. I do it in the morning, and I grab whatever tools I need depending on what paper shows up that day. So for instance, I have watercolor paper, I have scrap pieces of vintage paper, I have calligraphy paper, old practice paper that I've used. So whatever paper I pick up that day, I will use the medium that will work well with that paper. I've noticed that sometimes old vintage paper, I can't erase very much on them because the paper rips, but whatever comes up that day is my starting off point. So I don't have to think about what to do next. I kind of just let the paper guide the medium, and then the medium guide the drawing. Now, what I have noticed is, I'm going to reverse a little bit. I am a firm believer that you should practice your art every day. So we're going to use watercolor because that's what I'm best known for. So if you want to become a better watercolor artist, you need to practice. And I want you to practice daily if you can. 20 minutes, 30 minutes a day. Doesn't have to be a big process. I believe that quantity over quality is what's important. But I'm actually going to backtrack on that. So what I mean by that is, if you practice for an hour once a month, that's fine. It'll take you a little bit of time to get into that practice and to get into that mode and get your muscles warmed up and just your creative flow and focus warmed up as well. And you'll probably have a successful painting session, and you'll probably be able to paint quite a bit. But then with that month passing until the next time you sit down to paint, you'll have lost your creative mojo. And I can't even describe it in a singular way, but it will take you so long to get into that creative mode that you're going to waste half of that time getting into the creative mode. But if you were to sit down and practice daily, getting into that creative mode is going to be a little bit quicker. Your muscle memory is going to start to develop. Your ideas it'll almost be like a conscious stream of creative ideas that will start to flow into one another. You'll have more inspiration. You'll build your skill. So the quantity of practicing every day for 20 minutes versus the quality of spending like a solid hour, or even if it's 3 hours once a month, I believe will benefit you, especially as you're learning. So when I was picking up tools to start sketching portraits. Portraits are something that I've always loved. I actually wanted to be a fashion illustrator, and I would draw these figures, and they were horrible, but I was like, oh, wouldn't it be great to be able to draw? I love the female figure and form. I think we are beautiful in all of our quirks and characteristics. But I never got there. So I've always been interested in portraits. I've never been good at them. I probably started taking classes here and there in 2017. I actually have an in-person class that I've just signed up for at our Toronto Art Gallery, which is Ontario Art Gallery, which is a little bit intimidating, but I'm really excited to get in-person instruction again. So it's been a process of the last probably 5 years where I've been practicing and trying and doing and allowing myself a bit of room to breathe and coming back to. But it's not until these last 72 days, because I'm only on 72 of the 100, where I've really started to be able to see the creative flow, where I can sit down and from memory just draw a portrait. And it's just, I don't have anyone in mind, it's just I let the character come out as it needs to that day, which I think is really important. So if I release the outcome and release what the final drawing should look like, I actually notice that I get more creative. It comes together more easily, my proportions look better, and I'm just happier with the overall outcome. So with practicing every day for about 20 minutes a day, so as much time as it takes for me to drink my morning coffee, I've really been able to get some good practice in, build my skills, build my muscle memory, and that creative expression. So I'm going to show you 2 examples because I do believe that sometimes quality over quantity is more important. And what I mean by that is because I'm a little bit rushed, not rushed, but I do give myself a time limit because I have stuff to do. I can't sit at my desk all day and paint as much as I would love to. Because I'm a little bit rushed in the mornings, I don't have a lot of time to paint. When I do have more time, so I'm going to show you 2 examples, I notice the quality of my portrait is much better. So there are times when I believe that quality far outweighs quantity. So if you only have 3 hours in a week or 1 hour in a week to paint or draw, then do it, and that means you'll have more time to refine what it is that you're working on. So I'm trying to talk and find an example here. I'm going to go back to the earlier ones because I feel like, here, let's do this one. Okay, so I'm going to show you, and what I'll do is I'll even maybe do a little photo so you can look at them beside me as I'm talking. So I'm going to put a card behind it. So this is day 4, I think it is. So this is a charcoal drawing. It's pretty basic. Again, spent maybe 20 minutes on it. I wasn't as experienced at this point because it was so early on. And this is day 26 where I had more time. So I'm going to do them side by side as I'm talking about them. So when I'm sitting down and I feel a little bit more rushed to paint, or I'm not as warmed up, then I notice that I don't put in as much detail. If there's a bit of tension in the painting, I don't spend as much time refining that painting or that drawing. But when I have time to add more detail and refine my drawing first before maybe I add watercolor or gouache or whatever it is I'm using, then I notice that the end result feels even like a higher quality for me in terms of what's reflected back at me in the piece. So this I probably spent about an hour on. I actually sat in the morning watching TV. Hopefully you can see that okay. Again, I'll change the angle. And this is like a 20-minute drawing that I worked on. So the quality outweighs the quantity when you want to create a more complex finished project, whether you're painting a bouquet of flowers, a single flower, working on a landscape or a portrait. The more time you spend on your drawing and then adding in your values of paint and color, the more refined and finished the piece will look. So I can go back to this one and add more time and start refining it, and that will improve what I'm using the word quality, the quality of the piece, but again, I just will be able to add more value, so it'll create more depth. I'll be able to add more detail, so it'll become more refined. So at that point, I believe if your end goal is to create a more complex drawing or painting, then quality far outweighs the quantity. Okay, so hopefully that's not too confusing, but I thought it was really interesting when that idea came up, because for me, I just want you to paint as much as possible. I just want you to put brush to paper as much as possible and as often as possible, because as you're learning, that's the best way to grow your confidence, your skill, and your techniques. And then you can sit down to refine everything that you've been able to develop by creating a more quality painting, drawing, whatever it is that you're working on. Okay, so that's a little bit of my philosophy. I think what I'll do, so I don't overwhelm you, is in another video, I'll do a little bit of a breakdown of my 100-day project and what I've been working on. So I'll show you more of my drawings and paintings. But it's been a really great experience to learn a little bit more about myself and my process, and even to, again, refine how I express portraits and deciding what tools I want to use. I've gone back to my pencils and charcoal, and I've really loved that. And even working in watercolors, I haven't been painting in watercolors much because I'm working on my exhibition pieces and my new art shop, which I'm launching soon. So I've been painting a lot with acrylics and using pastels and things like that. So even just to be able to pick up my watercolors, this is done in watercolor, has been a real treat. So whatever it is that you are hoping to grow, again, whether it's your watercolor painting, sketching, whatever it is that you're doing, know that I believe in quantity over quality for sure. So get the paper or the paint on paper, observe what that looks like, see what is causing a little bit of struggle, and then start working on your quality. Okay, so it's just putting in the 10,000 hours and getting to a point where you're more comfortable with your tools and techniques and things like that, and then you can start refining your craft and your art. Okay, so hopefully that made sense to you, and that it maybe shifted something in the way that you're going to approach your art process. I'm hoping that you've been able to tune in to the podcast episodes and you've been enjoying them. And one last thing I want to ask you, I really want to share with you some of my sketchbook making supplies and strategy for how to make my sketchbooks. I don't have one handy because I brought them upstairs to sketch with. Let me know if you want me to create a tutorial or maybe even just a live that we do together. I am totally open to hearing what you want to do with that. So with that said, thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this. Make sure to subscribe so you get notified of new videos. We have lots of stuff coming at you, especially this month. And give me a thumbs up, comment below, let me know what you think, and I will see you next time.